Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast channel. My name is Jed and we are doing philosophy. Hooray. Well, specifically we're doing the part of philosophy that involves discovering, recognizing, and resolving the problems that get in the way of our most meaningful goals. Our quest to know ourselves and reality, and obviously to function through it artfully, to be able to reach your good and help friends and loved ones along the way. So that's philosophical midwifery. For anyone new to the game, I want to start today with two things from what happened last episode and what has happened in the period of time between the last episode and this episode. The first one is last episode there was a chatter who referred to something as a pathologos, and I want to acknowledge that this is wonderful that this chatter is trying their best to frame their understanding in a language that we are learning here. So he didn't say you are you're a crazy-headed idiot or anything. He used the term that refers to a kind of false belief that blocks you from sharing in logos and learning and understanding and growing. Our language. He's using our language. Coming into a football locker room, you better know what a tackle and a scrum is and a try is and communicate in that language. Otherwise, well, you might alienate people. You're not going to connect with people. And if you're not learning the language, what are you doing? You're not really learning, are you? You're not really in the game. So I want to acknowledge the chatter's, that aspect of the chatter sharing information, recognizing some sort of block to what they were trying to do, and using the language that we are learning here to identify and name it, the pathologos. So I want to shout that chatter out because that took courage and it took open-mindedness, and I hope it was fun to try and understand the nature of a problem using a new kind of language that can unlock for all of us a new kind of way of being. So a round of applause for that. Now, in response to that, I did respond quite firmly. Not because of the chatter. We're celebrating the chatter's effort and being here and trying to learn a new language. All wonderful stuff. But the reason why I was firm is because this can be a very big issue. And I tried my best to explain it. Not only is it a big issue, it's a big issue that has the potential to surface even towards the end of your journey. In other words, if you've had success, you've had a lot of success, you're making progress, you're learning, you're developing, you have had enlightenment experiences, maybe you've understood them, you shared them with your friends, you're learning the art, you're having all this wonderful success, and you're very close to stepping into your highest purpose or your destiny. Even then, this type of problem surfaces for people. It's very interesting and it's very powerful. It's not only very powerful, it's very indiscriminate. It's all-encompassing. It's a catch-all. It can be used by people in the wrong way as a catch-all to dismiss anything. Some people pretend it's a automatic win the argument button. And that issue is referring to things that aren't pathologos as pathologos by the pathologos itself. What do I mean? hang on a second. I had to pause for a second. So the idea is, as you progress towards the logos, the pathologos, whose job it is to sabotage you from your development, uses the word pathologos not to identify itself, but to dismiss anything. If someone's in a problem, even towards the end of, towards the height of your development, and someone said, oh, this might be a problem, or there's something else you can learn, and their response is, no, that's just your pathologos. Dismissed. You lose, I win. That kind of stuff. And it sounds stupid and juvenile, but not to the person. Remember, pathologos traps you to your fate because it traps you in a single way of looking at things, a single way of responding, and a single way of being. That seems obvious and inevitable. Fate. So to them, it'll be like, obviously I'm right, and what you're saying is wrong. And I'm not even going to entertain it because I'm just going to dismiss it by saying it's just your pathologos. So, pathologos as an idea and word is super, super important. And last time we were wondering about whether midwifery is more important than philosophy, or if they're the same thing, or if philosophy is actually more important. But then you can't get into philosophy without midwifery. It's the doorway. So then does midwifery become more important? And so on. But then in order to identify a problem, you have to be seeking your highest goals. That's philosophy. That's the logos applied to truth, not the logos applied to removing false, which is midwifery. What's false? Removing what's false. So you have to be in this game to surface the blocks to this game in order to do this game. So are they really the same thing? This is what we've been wondering about since this came up at the beginning of the book. I'm leaning towards midwifery. Midwifery is most important. Because it's the cause of your problems and it's the cause of harm, and it's the inability to actually reason and reflect on evidence, and because it's censoring your perception of reality based on your pathologos projection. When people point to the real world that everyone else sees but not you, and maybe not your siblings or your family members who might share a similar pathologos, but to everyone else it's obvious, not to you. And so you get confused and defensive. And this is illustrated in the Iliad, which is the story of the potentially the most gifted, terrible person. The worst person, Achilles. Divine abilities and strength and so on, used for his pathologos. And the Iliad is the story of this person, the worst person, going through dream analysis and philosophical midwifery to turn themselves around and become the best person. And have various different enlightenment experiences along the way. Notably, a brilliant light experience on the battlefield, which is interesting. So therefore, well, in that story also, the idea is Achilles at the beginning, when he's in his problem, isn't joining the war for the Greeks. Everyone else knows why. Everyone else can see his problem. All the other units in their other camps and tents just outside of Troy, getting beaten by the Trojans, hoping that Achilles, their great hero, will join the fight. Everyone else can see his problems, but not Achilles. And they all talk about, well, there's nothing we can do. We see the problem, he doesn't, and you can't tell him. Because if you point to something that's not in their reality because of the pathologos censoring your perception, making you respond to projections of your own problems from childhood, that's the analogy your mind is projecting, analogy is behind it all, a false analogy, then point to this mysterious world. It's going to be confusing to them, and they can get angry and defensive and so on and so on. So they had to just wait. Fortunately, Achilles took on the quest that we're on and turned himself around, became an example of a great person. So, what? So, that's kind of why I'm leaning towards midwifery as most important. It'll stop you from doing bad things, and it'll stop you from interpreting reality, and it will free you to... And that's where philosophy comes in. Do anything. Do whatever. Do what you want, but better now, but properly now, but with excellence now. As your primary goal now, without the anxiety before and after now, without effort in the moment, with the full force of your being, without planning. Authentically yourself. And, well, there's two things a midwife would say to such a person, having gone through midwifery themselves. They'd say, number one, are you now curious to answer the questions, what are you here for? Or what's the meaning of life? Or what's the, I don't like saying meaning of life because it's such a disposable phrase. And people we're taught there is no meaning of life, or people can't know it, or if somebody came back from the dead, they would have told us about it, and no one's done that, so therefore you can't know. All of those things are wrong. Socrates does. Lots of people experience separating from the body. So I don't like to use the word meaning of life, but yeah, what's the highest you can reach? What's the measure of man? Or what's the purpose of man? What's the destiny of mankind? Where are you going to go when you die? These sorts of questions. Or now that you've removed the false image of the good, the false image of the self, and the false image of reason, pathologos, are you curious to master the true versions now that you're free? Notice this is a reflection upon their experience. Only their experience is the best activity. Just like we talked about last time, as human beings, we want to have experiences, again, pushing our excellence, ideally reading the logos. And then spend half our time reflecting on that experience. Did you see patterns? Now, what's interesting about the reflection is it's a safer environment to imagine how you could have, or to reason about how you could have responded more excellently. The idea of always aiming for excellence, or phronesis. Phronesis is a funny Greek word, very, very important. And if you're reading the Republic, and I know some community members are, make sure you're reading the Balboa version and keep an eye out for, okay, this is, keep your eye out for the word mindfulness, because that's one of the few mistakes that the translator makes. And it's not really a mistake, because he's the translator of the Greek one, Balboa, recognizes that this is for everyone. And phronesis is one of the hardest puzzles in philosophy. I've known philosophers in this game for 50 years, and they've barely even scratched the surface of even wondering about the nature of phronesis. But if you get to the end of the Republic, keep an eye out for where phronesis comes back. Anyway, one of the aspects of phronesis, which is called the virtue beyond all the other virtues, the innate virtue, the natural virtue, the highest virtue, in the Phaedo that we've read together on this channel, and you can find the links in the YouTube, link below. Socrates talked about how all of the other virtues that we train ourselves in, or put into our soul through discipline and habit and training and a community like this, and trying to do this once a day if you can, with your coffee in the morning. Cheers. Oh, Flamingo can smell the coffee. You know what that means. Uh-oh. He likes to drink my coffee. Off he goes. He said, in the Phaedo, Socrates points out all of these are only useful as currency to trade in for the real gold coin, the innate, single, unifying virtue called phronesis. One of the aspects of phronesis is always trying to do betterer. This is an expression coined by the author of the book we're reading, Pierre Grimes, because betterer isn't a word in English. But we might say seeking excellence. So that's our standard, and anything less than excellence is an indication for a pathologos that hasn't yet been a piece of your pathologos puzzle that you're ready to solve. It's a puzzle. People love puzzles, which is interesting because your problems are just puzzles. They're fun, like jigsaw puzzles or video game puzzles and stuff. It's fun. It can be. Again, the more you've got a supportive community and environment around you, or what Socrates calls in the Republic, the soil, the right conditions, then it's fun. This is the kind of world that is, if we are able to acknowledge the logos and pathologos and the primary importance of philosophical midwifery as a species, then our world could be soil. Our world could be a safe, fun, supportive, encouraging place to encourage human beings to try excellence. And when they fail, reflect and try again. That's a word that has sort of muddy right now, but utopia. It's not utopia, it's our natural way of being. Not yet, if we make this evolutionary step from man the maker to man the thinker, Homo sapien. So we say we're not really human until we learn how to take our power back from our pathologos and actually think. Then we can create a world in which we have the support and space and safety to reflect and try and do better at each time. Now, what that means is half of our time we pursue our goals, the other half of our time spent with coffee and chats with our friends or stuffies. That'll live on my table. But in that reflection, you can practice what would have been phronesis, what could have been the most logos and dialectic response. Or how could I have stayed with my goals? Or how could I have judged whether that person is lying or telling the truth? Or judged whether that's somebody who's a good faith actor, generally wants to learn, or they're just trying to pretend so they can sneak their pathologos in and crush the logos, beat up Socrates. Hurt the very people that could help them. These are all mistakes that we could make, but in the reflection afterwards, we have an ideal scenario where we can feel safe imagining what it would be like to do better, imagining phronesis. So you can include that in your reflection part of your day, or part of the exercise. You have the experience and then you reflect on it. Well, why not reflect on it with excellence? That can be fun. Of course, the danger with that is one of the appeals to pathologos-based fantasies. So notice kind of fantasies that repeat, feature what you think you are, your self-image, keep you tied to a certain way of being. But one of the appeals to it is it's safe. There's no risk involved. You can do anything in your fantasies. And, if only I would have answered this way. That kind of thing. But we want to go from that being a fantasy to actually, would that have been the right answer? Or the most phronesis, or the most self answer? The next time, and there will be a next time, because tomorrow you're going to hunt for a similar sort of scenario, pursuing your highest goals. The same kind of character might come up, and then you can practice responding in that way. What did you learn? 50% reflection. So then we do the reflection after. So this is actually a good analogy for understanding midwifery itself, because you could say, well, if our problems are caused because of a scene from childhood where we didn't answer properly, we didn't even answer at all. It was before we had language, or it was too dangerous to use our language when we were dependent on our parents or parental surrogates at that age. And so we wordlessly accepted the blame for what was happening because we didn't put words on it, number one, and we didn't judge it according to those things we mentioned, according to justice, according to beauty, according to truth, according to true care. But midwifery is different. It's not sometimes it's a life and death. If Ma or Pa responded in this way when I simply said this, imagine if I really showed what I was thinking. And we have expressions that the previous generations and the boomer generations laugh about, that Bill Cosby was famous for using. I took you into this world, I can take you out. As if just the fact that they happen to be a parent gives them the right to torture and harm you to the point of death. That's funny to the previous generations, but it's fucked. And that's the situation. You can laugh at it as a parent, but it's terrible. Stop it. Because a child recognizes that. In the pathologo scene, you don't want to silence people. You want to encourage, be the soil, create the soil for reflection. So, could have been the end of your life then. So you take the blame without words, causing this false analogy to be adopted in your psyche, which causes all our problems. But midwifery provides the soil for reflection. It's a safe environment. The midwife has an understanding of the logos and has an understanding of problems and is learning along with you. There are principles you follow. So if the midwife hits a block, you switch roles or you bring in a third party, that sort of thing, because they will come up. They will come up. If you think being a midwife is an excuse to pretend you know everything, you're in the wrong game, my friend. Principles are important. So, given the principles, given the friendly, encouraging nature, given the fact that you go back to it time and time again, there's never any threats. There's no, if you give the wrong answer, you're punished. Punishment's out the door. You can't be in the game unless you condone condoning. Punishment first, because any rewards or punishments means you can't be honest. We need honesty above all. So you could say midwifery is, and then as you play out, you practice using your understanding of the truth to put words on what you never did. So you could say midwifery is a safe environment for practicing putting words on things that you've never put words on before, or have been dangerous to put words on before, or you've been blocked from putting words on before. So that's interesting.
Keep that Lil Smug.
Hi.
Okay, my stream paused for a second. I apologize for that. I ran out of space on my computer. So we were talking about, yes, what we need to follow to correctly use the language. Because if we don't, then the word pathologos can be used as a catch-all to dismiss the logos. Are you using the word to end the conversation? Are you using the word to not provide evidence and reason? Are you using the word to not follow evidence and reason? Are you using the word to attack someone? In which case, the use of that word in that way, especially if you're familiar with the word, can be an indication of a pathologos. So I want to be very firm last time. So, hey, make sure you understand what a pathologos is. It's not a prejudice. People can have prejudices. But with new evidence and reason, they can change their mind. Pathologos can't change their mind. Or, to quote the oracle,
the problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
You can't reason them out of that position because pathologos can't follow reason. That's what makes it different from a prejudice or a false belief or even a supernatural belief. Supernatural beliefs are absurd, but it's not that they can't follow reason, it's just that they reject it. There can't be any reason or evidence to show that Mary was a virgin when she gave birth to Jesus. That's why it's an absurd belief or a supernatural belief. That's why it's one step up from a prejudice. But it's not a pathologos. So I want to make that clear. If you suspect there might be a pathologos, create the soil, follow the principles. Oh, let's set up the conditions. I'm going to provide some evidence and reason or logos, and we'll see if you can relate to it or not. Collectively, as friends, together. It's not a debate. After you condoning, you can condone debates. Because they don't change people's minds. And they make people more entrenched in their ignorance. And it's adversarial, and it doesn't acknowledge the fact that we are the same self. We are all individual minds seeking to know mind itself. Lots of problems with debates. But if you do recognize it, it has to be an introduction to a conversation and dialectic or dialogue to establish whether or not it is. To help the person, not to win the argument. Now, I'm saying this very strongly and firmly and as clear as I can, early. Early in for people who are early on the quest of philosophy, but early in the channel. We haven't quite reached 2 million subscribers and followers yet, so it's early in the life of the channel. Because it will come up. When people start finding the logos challenging, they'll start throwing the P word around. And we have to establish early and clearly a principle that you can't do that. You can say, well, I'm feeling like this might be a pathologos because X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about it and explore it. And if it turns out that I'm not seeing something I can learn, or maybe the reason why I was mistaken was my own pathologos, in which case we can swap roles. That's the game. Fun. So I wanted to make that clear while celebrating our chatter's work. He didn't do anything wrong. It's a principle. It's not personal. And it was great that our chatter shared their thoughts, tried to use the language, applied it as best they could. So we celebrate. And I just also adding, but also keep this in mind as a principle and keep an eye out for it as we do reach 2 million, 3 million, a billion followers or whatever. Be aware of it before, so that when people start, falling away from the logos and the dialectic, you can say, oh, I noticed that you're calling him a pathologos, he's calling you a pathologos. You're both not following the principles unless you've established X, Y, and Z. The second thing I want to acknowledge, and it's taken a bit of time because of a couple of technical problems today, is between last episode and this episode, one of our community members shared in our Discord, and you can find a link to the Discord if you want to join that, shared some dialectics that they have been playing with. on everyday stuff, which is a fantastic start. Like, I think mowing the yard. What's that? How does it function? How does it affect them? Synthesis, analysis, conclusion. And having gone through the dialectic, it seemed like they had learned more about that activity, so they did another one. Fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So I want to acknowledge that and celebrate that and do all of the sound drops.
Wow.
Not that one, though. I don't know where that one came from.
But hey.
No. Okay. I've hit all the good sound drops for that person. So that's really great. And the point of the channel. I don't know, how long have we been doing the stream for? Maybe a year or so? It feels like a long time. And we have a dialectic in the community, so that's fantastic. And it's a win. Because it's a
win.
Because, well, I heard somebody say once that even small movements in the right direction for mind, infinitely important. So even if one person picked up the dialectic and had to go with it, it's in their mind, it's in their soul. Even if they never do another dialectic again, it's in there. Somewhere. That they can benefit from. In their mind. And maybe even use when they're in problems or difficulties, including mental illnesses and stuff, that can be understood as, well, what happens if you leave your pathologos affecting your mind for 50, 60, 70 years? What do you think is going to happen to your mind? So a lot of mental deterioration can be seen as just simply the pathologos. So I wanted to celebrate that chatter, and thank you so much for sharing it in the Discord, and encourage everybody else. If you're doing something that you're having fun with, do a little dialectic. Pick something in it. Oh, I'm playing Mass Effect or I'm playing a video game and there is a person there. And let me define him, or a team there, or an idea. Let me define that idea. Definition. How does it function? Demonstration. How do the people having been affected by that relate to other people? And then having been affected, all those other people having been affected by that thing, how do they relate back to the beginning? Definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion. That last step, conclusion, has two parts because you can, to get the idea from the division. So the idea or the definition, how does it function? How do people having been affected by, let's say you're playing one of those Yakuza games. What is the Yakuza? How does it function? How do people affected by the Yakuza relate to other people? And then how do all people in this universe where the Yakuza exist, having been affected in this chain, then relate back to the Yakuza themselves? Do they fear the Yakuza? Do they want to join the Yakuza? Do they give their money to the Yakuza? That kind of thing. And that conclusion comes from the division. After seeing how people are relating to each other, is there one idea that's common or keeps repeating, almost causal? That's analysis. Synthesis is relating that key idea back to the original definition. That's synthesis and analysis, and together you have a conclusion. And like our friend in the community showed us, and you just learned something new about the Yakuza. So do it again. And share it with the community. And I remember promising that I would send the basket around in the community to shout the person a coffee. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that because I did promise. How can we shout the Shout out Coffee for sharing that kind of work. So I wanted to acknowledge those two important things. A kind of care for the true definition and use, or definition and demonstration of the word pathologos, and seeing how division, people who have that word might use it in a negative way to silence the logos without clearly defining it, and not the way it's supposed to be used to introduce people to a reflection on their pathologos, because that's their puzzle to solve. Definition, division, def, dem, div. And then the conclusion is, hey, it's not personal, it's a principle. Look out for it as it happens in the future. Anticipate it. And now, let me do it on the board. So what we're doing now is combining the 2 points I want to talk about today. The idea of sharing a dialectic and practicing it, even if it's on something simple like mowing the lawn or baby feeding Stubby. Definition. So let's take what's the definition of this is more homework for people. Well, not homework, this is a fun game you can play. How would you define the pathologos? Based on what we've been reading in chapter 2 and now chapter 3. Oh, and chapter 1, why not? Demonstration, how does it function? Division. Now you can say this is, this one. One way of understanding definition is the subject in relation to, remember, this is the 2 dots from our analogies. Last time it was copy is to model as the present is to our past. That's what we learn about our pathologos. Our pathologos is a problem because this is the analogy that we carry with us and project onto the world. The past pathologo scene is most real. Everything else is just a shadow of it. So we project that. Like the present is just a copy of the model. The present is just a copy of our past scene. So that's the analogy that we are reading about right now. But notice there are these dots. Copy is to or relates to a model as, that's 4 dots. The present relates to the past. Actually, that seems more like, see, I would even change this. I would say, it's not changing. You can rearrange the terms. Like a dog is to the dog trainer. You can also say a dog trainer is to the dog. Model is to copy as the past is to the present. Anyway, the reason why I'm reminding us of where we are in the text is because these 2 dots indicates a kind of relationship, is to. And that's what we're using here. So you can say if the fundamental principle or building block of thinking is analogy, allowing us to go from one logos to another logos. Analogy. Another logos. So we take what we have already, whatever level of remembering of reality our soul has kept despite our amnesia in our birth and our amnesia that comes with the onset of our pathologos. We still have some sort of, memory of beauty. We have some sort, because we recognize beautiful things. We have some remembering of justice because we recognize injustice. In fact, it's the injustice of this that keeps us angry, that keeps us stuck, keeps us moving to try and solve our problems. Or play out the implications when we blame others for our problems. So if analogy is the root or primary building block of logos or thought and problems, then we recognize that there must be a this is the division step, by the way. Is there one idea or one expression or division of the analogy that's most basic, most primary? Well, if we are looking for the archetypal analogy, we need some things. What's the fewest number of terms that you can express analogy? Because this is most primary, which means it has a higher existence metaphysically if we ever experience those dimensions, and hopefully you will if you stay in the game. But also, it has scope over everything else. The thing at the top of the pyramid has scope over everything else. So when we do division, we talk about all the different expressions, but then for conclusion, we need to synthesize and analysis, which means the synthesis has to be of here, is there an idea that has scope over everything else? So when I did my dialectic on the Yakuza, was there one thing that seems to affect all of the other things in the division? That's scope. Has scope. It's more primary. And it has scope or power over, or it informs or is the model for everything else. So if for the model or the primary expression of analogy, you need the two things. What are the two things in reality? There are only two things. There are things and there are relationships. So we have a relationship is these two dots. We need two things. So we can have thing A is in relation to thing B. Okay? This is what we're looking for. So what are the two primary things? Well, if you think about that, let me ask you this question. Is the first judgment you make about anything you see, is that self? Is that me? Is that mine? Or is that other than me? In other words, you have a direct, immediate experience of something, and then you experience the world, or whatever. But the world's not you, or at least that's the way it feels at this level of reality. So we could say the most basic, fundamental distinction behind everything, the two most primary terms are self and other. So now we've got two things in reality. If we were to invent a universe from scratch, that's where you'd start. There has to be some self creating it and experience it. You're needing a self. But you have to experience something, otherwise there's no relationship. You need to make another. So therefore, we can conclude the most primary relationship is self to other. Hang on a second. We could also say, well, what about if we've got two terms? We could also say self to self, or other to other, or other to self, or that's it. We've completely exhausted the kinds of relationships, the one thing that exists between the two most primary things. So this we can conclude is the archetype of analogy or the archetype of thinking. And if everything in creation has to unfold in some sort of, process, and we return using analogy to remember another logos, we have this logos of our physical world. Hopefully we learn enough to realize there are principles. Now we elevate to another logos, and then those principles. So now we're doing learning. And now we realize those principles have an existence of their own. Now we're into philosophy. We use the dialectic to understand them, but also to experience them. In that experience, that's non-physical. It's not through your physical senses. It's through the eye of your soul, or ousia. How are you going to make sense of it? There must be, well, it will help if you have a logos of understanding in your back pocket. Not because the logos of understanding applies to it exactly, but it's like it. In other words, it has a different kind of expression in a different reality, but you can use that analogy, another logos, to understand and make sense of this new world you're in. How to navigate it, how to go further into it, and maybe even how to go beyond it, which is what we do in philosophy. Because now that we're in the world of pure being, nous, we ask, well, hang on a second, what caused that? Analogy. And these are the 4 basic expressions of the most basic analogy. And what's cool about that is, definition is this one. What can you say about the subject or the self in question, which happens to be pathologos here, which is kind of ironic? Not how it functions to another or relates to another, but just in itself. So we take this and we put it, definition. How does it function to others that aren't pathologos? Oh, demonstration. Meaning these two have to fill out the next 2 categories as a complete expression of the most fundamental principle in creation and thought and development. That's the pathologos. And as it is the most primary, it has scope over everything, which means you can use it to understand how to mow your lawn. You can use it how to understand the evil cabal in the Mass Effect video game. You can use it to understand the Yakuza. You can also use it to understand logos, reality, and self, which is what we focus on in philosophy and midwifery, really. And because it has scope over all those things, it can be applied to anything. And then, of course, remember the 2 things. We have this experience, which is our learning. Now we've got to reflect on it. What does that mean? Well, if the highest expression of creation is this fundamental analogy, where did it come from? Must there be a cause to even the causal chain? And this is the kind of reflection that can awaken an even new level of participation or sharing in the logos. You can wonder what's beyond. What's the first cause? What's the self? Oh, and speaking of ousia, I remember the point that I forgot last time. This 50% experience, 50% activity, or do a thing and then reflect on it, or ousia, is what we do as a midwife when somebody goes through midwifery. They clear themselves up from their problems to do what? Well, we ask them to reflect on, where I left it last time was, ask them questions about, well, what about that question? Are you curious about what the actual logos is? Are you curious about what the actual reality is? Are you curious about what the actual truth about self is? So that they use their freedom from their pathologos to continue their journey, to stay in the logos, to stay in philosophy. The other kind of ousia after midwifery question that a midwife will ask is, hey, now that you're free of your pathologos, what do you make of midwifery? How important was it for you? And they'll clearly say it was the most important thing by far. Some people even say, I've had enlightenment experiences of ultimate reality. I would take an insight into my pathologos over an enlightenment experience any day of the week. So given that kind of ousia or question after the midwifery, hopefully the person who's gone through the process completely will reflect on that after having asked them that question, and they'll say, hang on a second, yeah, it is the best thing that happened to me. maybe I should learn to do it too. If it's the best thing, why don't I use my freedom from my pathologos to master this very art that helped me? So that's the point I missed last time when my recording dropped out. So what? So let's move along to finish our explanation of the structure of the dialectic. We have the self-to-self or definition, and we want to do one on the pathologos. So pathologos, what can you say about it just itself? We talked about that today. A certain kind of belief, certain qualities have to be met. It's like a prejudice in one way, but unlike it in another way. Again, this is for you. I'm trying not to give away any answers, but so you can have the fun. Then how does that thing you've defined function to others? That's demonstration. How does it function? Having been affected by the pathologos, how do you go on and relate to other people? So this defined pathologos becomes this. This having been affected by the pathologos is the next thing. Having been affected, how do you go on and relate to your partner or your family or your friends or your boss or your puppy or your dog or your soul or your reincarnations or your purpose? That's division. This other, how does it affect others? Other to other. Division. And then finally, now, which other? Is it this other, or this other? Well, it has to be in this level. So from here, one of those others, one of the, again, ideas that have a scope or repeating idea, there'll be something in this, in your exploration of this, that will signify or synthesize your division. How does that synthesis of this, so that's synthesis for O, then relate back to, so let's put this over here. That's synthesis. Relate back to, actually it's, now this, how does this, okay, how am I going to express this? And then we relate it back to the self, that's analysis. So if we go, here's synthesis. How it then relates back to self is analysis. That's better. That's good. That's good. That's analysis. And together, it's that final version of the most archetypal analogy. Which I call conclusion. O back to S. So yeah, the thing I was addressing today from yesterday, have you accurately defined pathologos? How does pathologos function to block the logos, right? Now, again, you say more. Don't say more than what I'm saying, but basically, we know already, block the logos. Now, you have to point, what's the other going to be? How it relates to people? So our other term is the logos. How does pathologos relate to the logos? How does self relate to other? It blocks it. So we've got blocks the logos. So let's find the parts so we really understand what's going on. Because this is, again, This is something you can take with you in everything. It's the paradigm of everything. Beyond, like even beyond this dimension. So it's a kind of education, and the use of it as a kind of nurture of your soul. That is the only kind of things that you can take with you beyond your life in this physical world, and therefore we could make a really cool dialectic to show how this is the meaning of life. Or, again, I don't like to use that word. This is our intended function and what we should be doing with our time while we're here. So let's look at it, if it's so important, and understand it as much as we can. So we've got self, clearly pathologos. Other, the logos. So we've got the other. Here is the logos. The self here, of course, the pathologos. And what do we have left? The relationship. Green. This here blocks. The pathologos self relates to, in a blocking way, the other, the logos. This is a really, really simplified example or demonstration or division, simple division of or expression of the paradigm of thought, development, creation, and so on. Analogy. Now that we've got those two out of the way, we can relate it. So one of the ways of approaching division is how does it relate to the topic in question? So for us, saying, hey, having been affected by the pathologos, what happens when people are doing philosophy and they hit their block, but it's so strong that instead of reflecting on it themselves, which is what we're supposed to do, we project our own problem onto others and say, that's their pathologos. That's your pathologos. Usually shouted. And it usually is followed by, and therefore go away or get out of the conversation, or you can't play philosophy. That's how it functions, having been affected by the pathologos, how you would function to others. You would tell them you're in a pathologos. No, you're not doing it. You're not in control yet. You're not free yet. The pathologos is doing it to you. But we can recognize it through this work. And then the last stage, which has two halves. Whoops. This one. Move it down a little bit. Move this one down a little bit. Okay. Oops. Okay. The eyes there. And therefore the conclusion is that's the conclusion that I tried to make. That therefore this, if you are in philosophy, then you will be mastering the logos, then this will happen to block the logos because your pathologos is in control. See? Makes sense, doesn't it? Therefore, the pathologos, and then that's synthesis, and we take it back to the start. That's analysis for our conclusion. Therefore, the pathologos blocks the logos, allows you to function to others to project that block, if you have learnt the word, as a catch-all to block anything, which will surface as you progress in your development of philosophy, your practice of midwifery, and your mastery of the logos. So therefore, we have a new definition of pathologos. The first one, well, we didn't really define it. That's for you to do. But we can take add to your definition of the pathologos from the book to include, along with false belief about self and reality, blocking you from your most meaningful goals, can't relate to reason and evidence and change your mind, a false analogy from childhood that the past is like the model of the present, which is like a copy, all of that stuff. Plus what we talked about today, which is not only does it do all that, which I didn't put in my definition, but you're supposed to. Plus, at the end of this, it also functions to blame others for your pathologos block in order to silence the logos and prevent you from developing. So, that's a way of unifying the 2 points that I wanted to make today. Number one, we want to be doing these little dialectics on pathologos all the time, because every page we learn, every episode we learn something new about the pathologos, and we're continuously learning. And I wanted to celebrate the community members who have been sharing their dialectics in chat, which is amazing, which is really, really amazing. I'm really, really happy and really grateful and happy for you that you're doing this. This is fantastic. You might not even recognize it now because it's new. Isn't this just a way of thinking? I'm just thinking about everyday things, just in this weird way. And actually, kind of before I did this dialectic, the way I was talking about it before was actually this. I said, look, you need to recognize the pathologos, and you need to know how it functions differently from a prejudice, and how it functions in this particular division or particular example. And even though you may not have been doing it now, be aware of it as a principle. There's our conclusion that you can add to your definition of the pathologos. So what I was doing is helping people improve their definition of the pathologos by pointing to this specific example. So I was automatically or authentically as self following the logos of the dialectic. And as you practice this little exercise, you might realize, well, I kind of think that way anyway, sometimes more than others, which is cool. The more you practice it, the more you'll see the significance, the more you'll appreciate just your little things that you did at the beginning. Having the courage and the openness and the fun, the curiosity to share your dialectics on the creation page of our Discord. Benefiting you and benefiting our community and other people who read it. It's a win-win. Oh, and then division, you can say, hey, not only, so we could do a dialectic on that, right? Sharing on the Discord, or definition, practice this way of thinking as much as you can. Share it on the Discord. Having shared it on the Discord, what do others do? They read it, and so what? They read it. Okay, so from there we have to synthesize all the people, these others, and you who shared it, and these others who read it. What's something common among all of them? Everyone benefits. You benefit, the readers benefit, the community benefits, and humanity benefits. It's a
win-win-win-win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win-win.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
Which is joyous and whimsical and full of childlike wonder, so we are very, very happy about it.
Wow. I don't want to eat a monkey.
Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second thing I wanted to point to, after celebrating the sharing of the dialectic, pointing to it, the importance of using it in this kind of a way to the pathologos, and addressing the fact that I was stern or adamant about it, which I apologize if it came across as, I don't know, not fun. It's supposed to be fun. But I really wanted to lean on the point. Because if you don't address it now, disaster in the future. Again, not blame. It's literally, you're somebody who has made the step, they're even new to the game, made the step, they're doing the dialectic, they didn't know. Trying their best to use the language, they didn't know. So it's not personal. It's a principle that you can understand if you apply the dialectic to it, which will come back to improve your definition of the pathologos. You've matured, you've learnt, which unifies as the celebration of doing the dialectic, which we're doing in our community, with the importance of applying it to the pathologos so you use it properly and you don't use it to sabotage yourself. The 2 points that I want to talk about today. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. The next thing we're on to is the reading. We are reading the text. This is the end of the last chapter, which also has a little exercise for you to do. Complete the analogy. What's the analogy here? Zoom in a little bit. The only difference between the wisest and worst, Achilles at the end of the story and Achilles at the beginning of the story, among us, or, I don't know, Trump, Elon, Putin, Hitler, versus Socrates, Pierre Grimes, everyone in our community because they're the best. The only difference between the wisest and the worst among us is that one doesn't know the premises are false and so acts out the implications of their ignorance, just like what? This. Playing out the implications, or demonstration and division. And the implications is how does it end, or the conclusion. We are doing a dialectic as a human being in real life. We are living dialectics. Okay? And the worst of us plays it this way. They are unaware of one's premises being false. What's that? Their false definition. The premise, the false definition behind everything. Or maybe they have a false premise about how we should function. So maybe they get definition and division wrong. And so acts out the implications of one's ignorance, fails to comprehend just how much of one's life is determined within fixed boundaries. That sentence fits into the dialectic. Now, I'm really eager to do it myself, but not on stream. You guys do it. Look, premises are false. Which one is that? Is it definition, demonstration, division, or conclusion? Or synthesis analysis? Acts out the implications of one's ignorance. That's a different thing. Which one is it? Fails to comprehend. Ooh, where would you put that? Just how much of one's life, sounds like division to me, is determined. Sounds like a conclusion. Now that's the worst kind of person. The challenge to you is to do the other side. What would the wisest be? How would the wisest be functioning as a living, walking, thinking, acting, feeling dialectic? If we've just described what the worst of us does, now that's the author's challenge to you, because the author is sharing his art, actively trying to help humanity, and you especially. Humanity second, your soul first. The challenge for me is to share it on Discord, and I would like to promise we'll send the basket around to take up money, to shout you a coffee, but I'm not sure how to do that yet. Maybe we can figure out something else. Maybe we can have people on the stream to talk about what they've done, and they can drink a coffee while I drink a coffee, and we can, I don't know, we'll find a way of doing it. And if you haven't any idea of how to provide an incentive for people to share their dialectics in the Discord, I'm open to it. I do like coffee. You know who else likes coffee? Yes, that's right. The flamingo. Loves it. Okay, leave some for me. Jesus. Oh yeah, and then compare them. So what's the exercise? Well, really the exercise the author is asking us to do is take this and translate this last paragraph into a dialect. And also you can use that to take this whole chapter and unify all of your thoughts so far. Then do the one he didn't do. What would the wisest person do? And then you've got two terms. The worst person. You got two fundamental terms that our author is giving us. Two fundamental terms. Now, we said the most primary terms in the expression of reality that we can perceive right now is self and other. That's the first thing. Otherwise, I could... who we got here? Let's use the seal. If I pinch the seal's arms... Hang on, I'm just showing something. Don't get mad. If I pinch his arm, he jumps. Not me. Because that's not me. It's not myself. That kind of fundamental distinction. But what we are seeing is the author is making a different kind of presenting two fundamental terms. That's fundamental for what we're doing. Specifically, the worst human being and the wisest human being, which tells us something. Not only does it tell us what the worst is, it tells us what the best is. To be the best human being is somehow to be wise. What the heck is wisdom? Did we talk about it? I don't remember. So if you do this, you will end up with your own working dialectic definition and understanding of wisdom. Which is fantastic because he's saying, by the way, the opposite of the worst or the best is wise. So you're on the way to becoming the best person by doing that second half of the activity, doing a dialectic on wise, doing taking that last paragraph that we got here. There's only a few terms. One doesn't know one's premises are false and so acts out the implications of one's ignorance and fails to comprehend just how much of one's life is determined within fixed boundaries. So take that, make it your own. You've got a dialectic for the worst. Push the implications to make a dialectic of what wisdom would be. Everyone in the community will cheer for the development of your soul to become more wise and more bestest, to become betterer. And finally, compare the two. You're covering all of the most primary basis of the most primary way of thinking or paradigm of reality applied to the most important human things. Now, self and other is beyond human. It applies to everyone. Any sentient being on any planet, in any reality, in any dimension, in any time in the past, in any galaxy, in any multiverse, self and other will be primary. Therefore, what we're learning is a way of thinking that's universal to everyone. If Thanos comes and sends you with the space stone to another dimension, what will you do? Well, what baby Phoenix Stuffy would do is ask, hey, who around here is doing the dialectic? And they'll say, you look weird. With your legs and arms and eyes, what a strange creature. You will say, oh, that's yeah, I am a bit strange in that way, but I'm not strange in that I have consciousness. I have self and other, and I can acknowledge that there is a self and other to learn understanding, which is self is to other, ? Or rather, self to self, self to other, other to other, other to self. You'd ask the question, who's in the game? 1 billion years in the future? Yep. Different planet? Yep. Different species? Yep. Why? Because it's the logos. Because it's analogy itself. Because it's the paradigm of all paradigms. And all I can do to help you is promise coffees that I can't afford. Promise that one day we'll be so organized as a community that we will all chip in 4 cents each to shout you a coffee every time you post this kind of a thing. Dialectics on what's most important, self, other, or worst and wisest. Now, they're not related, of course. That's just 2 different activities. And also comparative. Now, if I circle everything, then the circles are not going to mean anything. So let's try that again. Yeah, so my job is to encourage you to do this. Do what? Dialectic on one term. Now, self and other, like, we're not doing that right now. We're doing worst and wisest and how they relate, covering all the bases of the most fundamental analogy for human development. This is, of course, beyond human development. But what's interesting is this activity frees you from what's worse. It's the only activity, I'm pretty sure. I mean, enlightenment experiences can diminish your pathologos for a short amount of time to a degree, because if you have a direct experience of yourself and reality, the false belief telling you you're not divine or you're not immortal or you're no good or there's not a rational caring universe, that's not going to be as powerful because you just experience the exact opposite. So it can diminish the pathologos for a while, but again, not permanent and not completely removed. So therefore we can conclude that philosophical midwifery is the most important activity. Well, that was the question at the start. Is it the most important or is it equally important to... But what it can do is it can free you to this, the fundamental philosophical, to free you up to be able to pursue what you learned in doing this dialectic, in doing this comparative dialectic. Or just comparative essay, maybe. I suppose this could be a dialectic too. I don't know. Try out that one. See how you go. But what you get from that is a skill and a freedom from what's false that frees you up to then ask this question. What if I took all the skill I got learning this in midwifery and applied it to this? That's philosophy, the truth about self and other. And as we were just saying, while this is the human game, this transcends humanity itself. Maybe there are different species who grew up in... Remember, the human evolutionary conditions were very strange. All of these fellas, these guys here... Yeah, you. Yeah, you're not here to wave. You're not the... T-Rex thinks he's the star of the podcast. He's not. But you're an important actor. These guys were all flattened by an asteroid. So all of the big predators that normally you'd have to address or relate to or find a way of, evolving in those conditions, they were all killed. And there was a huge dust cloud that affected evolution as well as a result of that asteroid. And so humans grew up in certain strange, from what I hear, conditions that are very strange compared to other planets, developing species, possible developing species, and that we grew up very quickly. Very quickly, evolutionarily speaking. Perhaps without yet having to discover this. Therefore, we have the possibility of playing this out to the extension of all life, to the extinction and destruction of all life. Look at the way like our economic system, our political system, our justice system, our war system, everything is fucked. Everything is pathologos ridden and driven and motivated. And
This guy had to.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems because we had evolved so quickly to that potential without these guys keeping us in check. Again, that's just a theory, but there are other species who might not be in this game. Nevertheless, graduating or freeing ourselves to enter this game allows us to not just learn a dialectic that can help people stuck, but also learn a dialectic that we can take with us anywhere. Talk to any person on the planet. You have a 5-minute meeting with some terrible person, you'd be able to talk to them. Well, hopefully this way. But if you find yourself on a different planet, different dimension, hey, maybe you graduate Earth and you meet Socrates where he is, where he said to meet him in the Phaedo. If you're a true philosopher, you'll rush to meet me where I'm going, he said minutes before he was killed by the state for doing this. Because this. Why the hell would you kill Socrates, stupid humans? Learn midwifery so you stop it. We need Socrates. What if you made him king of the world? Imagine where we'd be today. I said king. Tyrannosaurus Stuffy likes to remind me that his name means king. Tyrannosaurus Rex. He thinks he's the king. No, you're not. All of your friends and family, they got killed by that asteroid. Now he's sad. I didn't mean it. Anyway. So what are we left with? We're left with a skill, an art, and a quality of soul that we can take with us wherever we go, in meditation, in spiritual experiences, in dance, in chanting, in drugs, and whatever it is that you use to have spiritual experiences or elevate your state of mind. You can take this with you and talk to anyone, anywhere, on any galaxy, in any time, in any dimension, on any planet. If doing this teaches us a skill and frees us from what's false about self and other, or self and reality, then we can actually wonder, what is self? What is reality? How are they connected? Is one actually the other? Is one the holographic projection of the other? Does self create reality? And how can you understand that dialectically and communicate that dialectically in a question and answer friendly discussion back and forth? That's the dialectic. A skill we get from this that we can apply to this so long as we're free of that. And what we're saying is we take this skill and way of being with us anywhere. Talk to anyone, anywhere, for all time, for eternity. That kind of a thing. And therefore, what we must be here to learn. Unless you want to pretend you don't die. If you want to pretend you don't die, then the logic breaks down. And you might not be able to just... Well, if you're going to deny death, then you're not going to learn anything anyway. So don't deny the fact that we will die. But acknowledge that in order to understand why we're here. So that's what you can do. Isn't that neat? And that's what we're being asked to do at the end of chapter 2. So I encourage you to do that. I applaud you for doing that. And take the challenges to define Pathologos too, like we talked about today. And once again, share it on the Discord if you like, which will be a win-win.
It's a win-win.
And hey, maybe we all leave together. Maybe everyone in the community meets each other on that dimension where Socrates is and say, hey, you did the dialectic too? Oh, you did the dialectic too? You graduated Earth too? Oh, me too. Let's see where this goes. Making it a
win-win-win-win-win.
A win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
A win-win-win-win-win.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I want to do this. So that was today. Interesting, important reflection on the puzzle that we have to solve. in chapter 2, and as human beings, the implications for our journey, for the galaxy, for other life forms, to really, well, as we say, half of the time experiencing, half of the time reflecting. This is a reflection episode. Which brings us nicely to where we are, because where we are now is the chapter where we are reading. Let me bring it up on the page. This one. Where is it? Oh, it's closed. I need to open up the right document. Here we go. And now I bring it up on my OBS. Here we go. There we go. Because where we are in the text now is chapter 3, belief and analogy. We've covered the 6 kinds of belief and how all of them are different from true dianoia understanding, which is philosophy, and knowledge. So these are not knowledge. You can't get knowledge through your physical senses. The best is axiom and scientific beliefs. Until you ask the question, what are the principles for the scientific laws that we are discovering? Or what are the principles of those axioms that we can never prove in our physical world, but have to exist? So 6 classes of belief. Right down the bottom is prejudice, and then below that even is pathologos. And now we're on to the analogy part. Fundamentally, the root analogy behind our problems, the believer's present is to the past as a copy is to a model. This isn't what's real. We project what's really real, home time, when we were little. So we're on the analogy section, and because of our reflection and ousia, and applying what we're doing in the highest possible way, phronesis, or always trying to do betterer, especially in both your activity and your ousia, we have discovered for ourselves, this. Nope. We have discovered in our reflection, trying to do betterer, this analogy itself, and how analogy not only, we're going to read how it relates to our problem, but how it relates to thinking itself. What's going on? Okay. How analogy relates to thinking itself, to the dialectic that we're trying to use, and how it's fundamental to unfolding, because to unfold, there has to be a creation of the other and creation of relationships. It's also how we go back up, because we learn the logos of the level we're on. We apply it analogically to the next level up. So there's some same, some difference. By the way, that some same, some difference also is analogy. Because if you say the present is to the past exactly the same as a copy is to a model, they're not the same. One's about time, one's about a model. There is some sameness and some difference. So baked into analogy is the idea of likeness, or some same and some difference. So baked into analogy are all these fundamental principles that unfold in creation for reality, and also we use to return home. Because every level, because the way of training ourselves to be receptive to those higher experiences is the dialectic. We often talk about that. Focus, concentration, open, curious mind, using the highest understanding that you have, genuine in the present. All these are the conditions for meditation. But meditation, we don't have to use the word meditation. It's just thinking. Because we can say, well, if the worst kind of person plays out the implications of their unsuspected false premises, they're meditating. Humans are already meditating. We are masters of meditation, just as we are masters of the dialectic. Well, we're masters of meditation until we master the dialectic and realize what we'd be meditating on is a false dialectic. And if we're free of it, we can ask a question, why? Why do we necessarily get it? So, yeah, so this is analogy. This is behind everything we do. It's behind creation itself. And as its most primary, it has the scope over everything else. Analogy is super cool and kick-ass. And that's where we're going to be at next time in Chapter 3. We're on the analogy section of Chapter 3, which is called Belief and Analogy. So as we go forward, we'll have all this in our back pocket to help make sense of where we're going forward, which is cool and exciting, and hooray for us. Thank you so much for joining me. Tomorrow we're going to get on to the reading of those analogies, or we might jump back into the Meno, taking... we're on the last section where Anytos has come in. Angry Anytos. Yes, T-Rex likes angry Anytos because he's angry. He's a ferocious dinosaur, aren't you? So we're at the Anytos and the end of the text. How's it going to conclude? Is it going to give us a puzzle like the conclusion of Chapter 2? An exercise to do? And why would it be a puzzle and not just a neat bow on the end? Is that bad writing? Or by understanding the nature of the dialectic and analogy, maybe good writing always leaves you with this kind of activity and exercise because this is what we're here to do. Maybe we'll carry that with us next time in the Meno as we read it. Thank you so much for joining me. Key players today was Phoenix Stuffy, who played the role of the wise person, I think. We had the Flamingo, who popped up a couple of times to drink my coffee. Take a bow. Give a round of applause for Flamingo. And of course, T-Rex Stuffy, who featured today, especially talking about your ancestors and the evolution of our species to where we can cause our extinction because of our pathologos without having to learn to understand our pathologos to deal with critters like you. So he did a very good job today. His eyes are on the side of his head. So take a bow and we say, good job. Key player for today. How many bows do you want to take? Come on. Good job. And thank you. Oh, and thanks our friend in the community for sharing the dialectics. And let's get a coffee to him. And I'll see you next time.